teacher friends. Real quick video today to talk about teacher-to-teacher feedback. I had been teaching for VIPKID for maybe almost a year before I found out that you don't have to do teacher-to-teacher feedback. Did you know that? It was just, in the form, right, following parent feedback, so of course I just assumed everybody does it, it's required. It's not. Some people take that as, free reign to just not do it at all. I'm actually not one of those people. I do write teacher-to-teacher feedback 95% of the time. Here's how I use it. I use it differently for new students and for regulars. For regulars, the only thing I write for teachers-to-teacher feedback is the reward system and if there was some interesting information I want to remember. It's because I'm writing it for myself. I'm assuming that they'll choose me as their regular teacher. So like an interesting thing would be information about their family, where they live, hobbies, and so on. Nice to look at my feedback and say, oh yes, Jimmy has 2 sisters and he has a dog that I can ask him about and he lives in Shanghai. So for new students, my feedback's totally different because I don't know if I'll see the student again and I don't know if I will ever be their teacher again and I want to be useful to the next teacher. Again, you don't have to do this. You just do it kind of out of the goodness of your heart for the sake of the next teacher. And for those kind of students, there's usually 2 or 3 things that I will write. The first and most important thing is their name situation. Sometimes students have an English name. They make it really easy for us. Sometimes they don't. I'd say for trials, it's about half and half. Sometimes it says Bao Bao, which is like the Chinese equivalent of babe. And if they have a Chinese name, I feel comfortable enough listening to Chinese now, it's been a year and a half almost, that I can phonetically write it out in pinyin. Oh, here's an example. I had a student named Hua Hua, something like that. That's how she said it. And so I have had enough students that I guessed, I'm like, is this your name, Hua Hua? And she said, yes, yes. So for the teacher-to-teacher feedback, I wrote, her name sounds like Wah Wah, W-A-W-A, and it's spelled H-U-A-H-U-A. That kind of stuff is very helpful to teachers because then when you're writing the feedback, you can put their actual name in there and you can pronounce it correctly. The second thing I'll put in teacher-to-teacher feedback for new students is their age and any behavior stuff. So if it's a busy, kind of crazy student, if it's a young student, if it's a really serious student, I like to know that kind of stuff. It doesn't really change the way I teach them, right? But it's kind of nice to know what's coming. As far as looking at previous teachers' teacher-to-teacher feedback, about half and half of the time I'll look at it. When I was a brick and mortar teacher, I taught kindergarten for almost 10 years. Some teachers loved to come quiz me, the kindergarten teacher, about how the student behaved in kindergarten to prepare them for what they'd be like in first grade or second grade or whatever. And, sometimes that's kind of nice to get a little prepared if the student has some special situation or whatever. But as a teacher, I kind of liked being the kid's first teacher, the kindergarten teacher, because you go in with no assumptions about the student and you just do your best with the student. You start fresh from square one. You can kind of start to prejudge a student before you really get to know them. And I think it's kind of nice to give a kid a fresh start every year. So I kind of use that perspective for teaching online too. If you have teacher-to-teacher feedback that's this student is wild, doesn't behave well, doesn't listen well, or something like that, I think you would prejudge the student whether you wanted to or not. And perhaps that would affect the way you saw them. Just something to think about. Side note too, for teacher-to-teacher feedback, even though the parents don't see it, the learning partners do, and you should never write anything that you wouldn't feel comfortable saying to the face of the parent if you spoke the same language. Do you know what I mean? I would never go to a parent of one of my brick and mortar students and say, wow, your kid was so wild today. That's just kind of inappropriate. Of course, don't use any inappropriate language. Don't call a student a name. Just a thought. Don't even consider doing that. It's one of those things where you just need to be a professional because you just never know. I mean, it represents you. It could be tracked back to you and what you said about that student. And I wouldn't want anybody saying that about my student, about my own children, right? So you want to treat people the way that you'd like to be treated. That's just kind of how I live my life. So those are my thoughts about teacher-to-teacher feedback. Any tips? Any things that you really like to see in teacher-to-teacher feedback? Any reasons why you do it or do not do it? I'd love to know. Thanks. Talk to you later, teachers. Bye.